Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to another video. So this past weekend, I attended YCS Hartford, which was a ton of fun, and while unfortunately I did not manage to top this event, I did make it to day 2 at least, piloting right here the Punk Therian deck. And yeah, it was a blast to play. I thought it was a very skill-intensive, super fun, mid-range slash combo deck that has good matchup spreads across the board. So I thought it was a pretty solid meta call. I think especially into Despia, this deck shines really well. And while I did lose out on day 2 in round 11, I thought that the deck ran pretty smoothly. The losses I had were pretty much due to floodgates, mostly anti-spell fragrance when I just didn't draw the outs. So what can you do? It'll happen. It's part of the game. But yeah, I also refrained from making content on this deck prior to the event, even though I wanted to, just because I wanted to conceal my deck choice. And it actually ended up mattering since I did face a few of you guys during my Swiss rounds on day 1. So huge shout out to you guys for being awesome, and thank you all for saying hi to me if you did come up and just give me a shout. It's a big part of what makes these events so much fun, and I love interacting with you guys. So I definitely will be at Chicago as well. I should be at Chicago, so if you guys are going to be there, then I should be there as well. But yeah, if you guys want to know my matchups, by the way, it was 5 Sword Soul, 3 Fluwandereeze, only 1 Despia, which was sad because, again, I think this deck plays very nicely into that deck. 1 Branded Despia, and then 1 of the Adventure Synchro decks. So overall, I think those are pretty good decks as far as, just like a pretty good coverage of the meta. And so the deck played very well. 2 of my losses were to Sword Soul, drawing Anti-Spell game 3. Same with my draw in round 9 was to Sword Soul, who drew Anti-Spell followed by Double Rivalry, and I outed all of them, and then they had D-Barrier, and then time was called in game 2, so that was unfortunate. And then my loss in round 11 was to Fluwandereeze, who drew Insane game 3. It was Map Eagle into Heartbeast Featherstorm, and I had no hand trap or any outs, so what can you do? It is part of the game. And that's kind of what I mean by, like, when I did get to play the game, I think the deck ran very solidly. But yeah, let's just go ahead and talk about this in depth without any further ado. There was a lot of theory and testing that went into this, so I'll be more than happy to kind of explain my choices here. And I do think there's a lot of room for improvement, both in terms of the build and in terms of my play, even though I felt like I played pretty well overall. So I will be resuming content on this deck now that the event's over. So if you guys are a fan of this deck, then you feel free to stick around because I'm going to be doing quite a lot on it. But here we go. So for the Punk stuff, starting things off, we have 3 copies of Xiamen. We have 3 copies of Ogre Dance. We have 3 copies of Foxy Tomb. We have, of course, 3 copies of Emergency Teleport. And then for the one-ofs, we have 1 copy of Deer Note, 1 Sharikusai, 1 Madam Spider, and 1 copy of the Dangerous Gabu, which I will be explaining all of these momentarily. So early on in my testing, I actually deliberated on playing the Adventure Package in Punk Therian just because, there's some cool synergies, such as, namely, you can excavate and mill the, Enchantress off of Chaos Ruler, which, if you guys aren't familiar, the Punk cards facilitate Chaos Ruler plays quite a lot. But I ultimately ended up not going with Adventure stuff just because it would require you to cut down on the Punk starters, namely Ogre Dance and Xiamen, because those would feed into normal summons that would eventually activate their effects a lot of the time. So I didn't feel like it was worth it, and these cards are like really good to draw, just because they force out a lot of things by themselves. And so I wanted to just max out on the good Punk cards to play, and this made it so that you had a very high chance of drawing one, and if you draw any combination of different names, you can play through almost any singular disruption, especially hand traps, but with the exception of Xiamen and Ogre Dance, like if you draw like Almond and E-Telly, or like Almond and Foxy Tune, or like Ogre Dance and E-Telly, or anything like that, you can play through a hand trap pretty much all the time. And if you draw Xiamen and Ogre Dance, if you draw another Punk, like any other Punk, then it still actually allows you to play through a hand trap or a disruption, which is really nice. But let's go ahead and talk about the cards individually here while we're at it. So first up is Xiamen. She's a Psychic level 3 tuner that reads as an ignition effect. You can pay 600 life points at any Punk from your deck to your hand besides herself. And also the second effect that is a bit of a secret effect, but one that I utilize quite a lot, is that if she goes to the graveyard, you can target a Punk monster in your field and make it permanently gain 600 attack. And that is very important because there actually is a 1-card Xiamen OTK, just like normal summon Xiamen is this game. And it also bounces 2 cards in the meantime. But yeah, really solid. If you want to see the combos, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll get to that. But I have a feeling this video is going to be a bit long because I have quite a lot to explain here. So I don't want to like overbloat this video. But yeah, again, I do want to like make a lot more content on this deck overall. So let me know if you want to see that. But yeah, she's like your primary starter. Like, not much to say here. Like, she's extremely good to open. And then we have the Ogre Dance next up, which is a level 8 Dark Fiend monster, which has 3 effects. So the first one's not really super relevant, but it can come up. If it's on board and your opponent activates a monster effect, you can make this card gain attack equal to that monster's original attack, I believe, till the end of the turn. The second effect is that if it's in your hand, you can actually attribute a punk monster to summon it out of your hand, which definitely is relevant in cases where, like, say your Xiamen gets impermed or something, and you want to, like, tribute it away so you can get, like, overlay body for an Xyz play, or, like, if you want to turn on your Psychic Therion, that definitely can be relevant for sure. So you don't want to forget this one. I actually utilized that several times throughout the YCS. And then the third effect, which is the most common one, is that you'll be discarding it to be able to add any non-level 8 punk monster from deck to hand. And so that is really, really good for being able to set up your Xiamen if you don't open it, or if you did start with Xiamen, you can actually use it for quite a variety of purposes. For example, one of the most common hand trap spots, or one of the best hand trap spots, I should say, is Ash Blossom and Foxy Tomb, because it gets you a lot of value when you get that effect off, not only being able to summon a punk from your deck, but also things like getting Therions out of your hand, since it does not discard another card for cost, just itself. And so what you can do is, to mitigate that, you can actually use Ogre Dance to go ahead and add something like Deer Note if you want to play around Ash Blossom, which at least guarantees that you get to the Deer Note, which is pretty solid overall. So yeah, I think that, like, this has a wide variety of purposes, and it is extremely good. Also a Dark, if I didn't mention that, for like Chaos Ruler, which is super, super strong as well. Being level 8 is nice for Xyz plays, etc., etc. Next up is the 3 copies of Foxy Tomb. So this is level 8 Light Monster. It's a beast that has 3 effects as well. The first one on field, similarly to Ogre Dance, doesn't come up that often, but if it destroys a monster by battle, you can make it, or you can gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. Could be good in time, potentially. And then the second effect is the same as the same as Ogre Dance's, where if you have a punk on board, you can distribute that to summon this out of your hand. And then the third effect is that you can discard it for cost, and then send another card from your hand to the Grave of Resolution to go ahead and summon any punk that's not level 8 from your deck. So really, really good at getting out, especially your Deer Note. There are times we want to summon out the other ones as well, which we'll get into a bit later. But this is the main tutor that lets you just start playing with your Synchros, your Links, even your Xyz at times, which is super, super nice. And so being a light for Chaos Ruler is also great, because like these two in tandem work very well. And so yeah, these are like obviously the great ones that feed into all of your combo strings, and so you want to max out on all of them because they're just very, very strong. Next up, 3E Telly. We don't really like to explain this one. I actually drew all 3 of these going second in my round 5 match up against Adventure Synchro, and it paid off really nicely because I was able to use the first 2 to force out Snow, plus Riser into Moonlight Dragon, plus Fleur. I got all those out of the way, and then the third one just sealed the deal because it was full combo by itself. And I already mentioned like Xiamen's an OTK, so like you can do a lot of really, really good stuff with it. So yeah, like if you draw like again different names of these, like different combinations of these, you're playing through hand traps a good majority of the time, which is really, really nice to be able to say about a deck that would otherwise struggle into boards or just like through hand traps and stuff. Next up, we have 1 copy of the Deer Note. This is a level 5 monster that allows you to, if it's in your hand, you can activate it, revealing another punk in your hand, and summon either itself or the revealed one, and the other monster that you didn't summon goes to grave. So it is super, super solid. Again, playing on Ash Blossom if you want to like add this off Ogre Dance or Xiamen, just to be able to, make certain plays happen that you are not guaranteed to otherwise. Also, the more notable effect that most people probably know is that if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can actually target a punk in your grave that's not level 5 and summon it back to your field, but then you're locked out of summoning Deer Note for the rest of the turn. Not a big deal, of course, because this allows you to go for Needle Fiber plays or Synchro 11 plays or like rank 8 plays, rank 3 plays, all sorts of stuff. And so that recursion effect is what really pushes the punk package to its maximum potential, and it is extremely solid in that regard. Next up is the Sharikusai. This one I think should be standard if it is not already, and I'll explain kind of why. So it has 2 effects. Both of them, or the first one is the Ignition effect, where if it's on your field on your turn, you can pay 600 life points to fusion summon a fusion punk monster, and then on your opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can pay 600 to synchro summon into a synchro punk monster. So why is this good? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. So the first one is that if you only open Foxy Tomb as like your punk starters, so to speak, if you don't play Sharikusai, you're generally going to be summoning Xiamen, and then you're going to Xiamen add Ogre Dance to add another Xiamen, which you can then normal summon to do like either Hulk or like you can do a rank 3, which is usually just going to be like Melier the Trees. If you're going for like Melier, then you have to have another Therion, which is not unlikely, but it's not the most guaranteed. And if you go for Hulk, then like Hulk by itself doesn't really do a whole lot in this deck. So you really want Charakusai because the fusion monster just allows you to tribute itself if it was fusion summoned to summon two monsters from your deck or two punks with different names that are not level 8 from your deck. So that's how you get access into Deer Note, which is very, very solid because like otherwise, like provided you didn't have like another punk in your opening hand, if you just open Foxy Tune, you're not ever guaranteed Deer Note access with like another body on board. So that's what this is here for, one reason at least. Another reason is that, again, if you get hand trapped, you really want to have a fallback plan. So, like, say your Xiamen gets impermed and you have, like, E-Tele as an extender, this can really help back you up and do kind of the same play as before. Similarly, if you have, like, you know, Xiamen and, like, you were able to resolve a search, but, like, you know, your Foxy Tune got, like, Ash or something, then, like, you really want to just be able to go ahead and use your other punks to be able to get you into, like, Shirakusai. Like, maybe, like, you led with E-Tele, for example. And like you can like Ogre Dance search this, which like really helps you out quite a lot. And so I do think that like this card is really good for that reason as well. The third reason is that you can actually use the effects to tag out on your opponent's turn quite a lot. And there's a lot of times where you actually just summon this off Hulk. And while its effects can't activate that turn, they can actually activate on your opponent's turn. So you can actually use the quick synchro effect to go into the Amazing Dragon, which is a multi-compulse for your opponent's cards. And that is extremely strong as a disruption. So I really like that, and it also is nice to be able to just facilitate the OTK with the Xiamen, because you can't perform it without this card. So I really do like having this in the deck. And then these two right here, these are potentially cuttable for sure. We have Madam Spider and we have Dangerous Gabu. So Spider lets you pay 600 as an ignition to add any of the punk traps, which this one is functionally just an imperm. But if you have a punk monster, you can gain life points equal to the original attack of whatever you negated. But yeah, this is just kind of like a little small package to help make your Shirakusai plays more robust. Because if you don't play these cards, like you're often just gonna go like the fusion monster tribute itself to summon Duno and another Xiamen, which is like fine. It gets you to the initial play, like in the instance where you got hand trap, for example. But it's really nice as a punish to be able to go into this to just go ahead and search the punk trap as like an additional disruption. And that sets you up really well to play around cards like, you know, Forbidden Droplet, Dark Ruler, things like that, which I thought were going to be fairly popular. And so I want to have a little bit of an insurance policy against it. It definitely does suck to draw the Spider by itself because it just doesn't do anything by itself a lot of the time, except like just grabbing this. But overall, I wasn't like too upset. This obviously is not very good to draw going second, but we cited out going second. And so I think like these formed like fairly decent functions. There's also another effect where if you target a punk, or if you activate a punk card that targets a monster in your opponent's field, I believe you can have a monster's attack. But I mean, I have never used this effect, so it is not very relevant there. But yeah, this is definitely fine. Excuse the background noise there, but yeah, this punk engine was extremely solid for me all throughout the entire weekend. I really had no complaints there. I never felt like I had not enough punks. Like the second Deer Note is something I did consider, but I didn't end up missing it just because like by the time you get to that point, like your Therians should be the cards that carry your engine to the finish line. And speaking of which, we will get to that right here. So we have 3 copies of the Lilyboria. We have 2 copies of Regulus. And then we have the 1-ofs here. We have the 1 Reaper, or 1 Bull. We have 1 copy of Duke. We have a 3 of the Field Spell. Shout out to my friend John. I had to give it back to him, the 3rd one. But 3 of the Field Spell. And then 3 of the Argos system, or however you pronounce that. I just call it system. So yeah, this is the supplementary engine to the deck, which I think is extremely, extremely solid. These cards are what put in work after you establish a like starting board with punks, and then like these again are kind of your finishers. So yeah, basically, the Field Spell is the best card in the deck. I'm just gonna say this straight up right now. This card has 3 broken effects. On activation, it adds you a Therion card, and then it has battle protection once per turn for any of your monsters by sending a Therion card from your deck to your graveyard as a replacement, or you can send the system. So it is really, really annoying for your opponent to deal with, and it doesn't activate, so your opponent can't really interact with it. It's also during damage steps, so like they can't really do a whole lot there. And it is super, super nice just to be able to have a card that gets you recursion, because also has a 3rd effect where if any monster is destroyed by battle, not even yours, you get to add back any Therion from your grave to your hand. So that card's also insane. Like this being able to send system is really, really good just to be able to have more follow-up. And this card just it puts in so much work. It is really good to be able to just like summon a smaller body, like say like a punk or a hand trap. You just crash into your opponent's stuff, and then you can just take the damage and then use the Coliseum to be able to send something, and then like you can use a bigger monster on your board to like attack over something to add back and play stuff in main phase 2. Like that comes up quite frequently, and then you also be surprised at how many people like read this card and still attack into your monsters anyways, just because like you're able to get more value. Like it's better for them not to attack, but if they don't attack, then like you're just guaranteed to live. And a lot of the times, like you can get your board broken, but if they don't out Colosseum, then you're just living. And living a turn in this deck is really, really like it's really impactful because these Therians just rotate into a lot of really powerful like removal effects, just effects that let you do a lot of like really, really good things in terms of just generating advantage or getting you just damage on board. So that's really nice. System is the next one to go over, I guess. This one is a Foolish Burial for any Therian card, not just monsters. So it may be some weaker hands. I actually did this one time when I bricked. You can actually send Colosseum and then add it back the next turn, because the second effect is that while it's in grave, you can target another Therian card in your grave, and then either put that target or itself back to the bottom, and then the other one goes to your hand. So yeah, this is extremely good to mill off Chaos Ruler, of course. Another thing is that it can add back, again, any Therian cards, so it actually adds back the other Therian cards that I probably should have put down here, which are Therian Charge and Therian Cross. So these cards are also like really nice utility because they're all highly searchable through the Lily Borea, because this allows you to go ahead and just add any Therian spell or trap. If you guys are unfamiliar with the Therians, basically they all activate in hand by targeting another Therian or a card of their respective types. Like you target a card in your graveyard, and they special summon themselves, and then you equip that monster to it. And then they all have secondary effects. So Lily allows you to send any card from your hand or field to the graveyard to be able to search you any Therian spell or trap. So it's the one that we play at 3 because it's the one we want to be milling or drawing. Because like this is the one that gets you access to the field spell, and like if you see the field spell and you keep it on board, your win percentage goes up drastically. Like this card sticking is extremely solid. So yeah, it's one that I'm a huge fan of course. I really think that like it's the best card in the deck. And then also we have Regulus, which is the one that most people know. It's just the Omni Negate for effects by sending a Therian monster card from your hand or field to the grave. As a quick effect, Reaper is a spell speed 2 compulse on your opponent's turn by targeting a Therian in your spell and trap zone and bouncing it back to your hand as well as another card in their field. Bull is a spell speed 1 ignition effect on your turn where you can it's basically a Scrap Dragon, but you have to target a Therian on your field. And then Duke just makes it so that if you have an equipped card, all of your Therians become impervious to card effect destruction. And then they finally all have the effect that while they're equipped to a Therian, they give that Therian monster their effects, like the secondary effect, and also 700 attack. So yeah, these are just like huge monsters. They apply a lot of pressure. They're really good. These being level 7 is not bad, just because like you can go ahead and like synchro with like the smaller punks into like Baron. You can also like use these as level 8s with the other ones as level 8s with the punk level 8s to make rank 8 plays, which are really nice. And so yeah, back to these two. Charge is basically the D-draw. You send a Therian from your hand or from your face-up spell and trap zone to the graveyard to go ahead and draw 2. And then Cross is a trap that allows you to, if you control a Therian monster, you can negate a monster effect or banish that monster. But if you have System in grave, you can do both. So yeah, these are really good cards just to like add off Lily if you have Field Spell already. Also, like they're addable, like they're recoverable, they're recyclable back off of the system, which is really good. And I think that overall these are solid cards, because one of the biggest problems with the deck is that you can't brick on too many Therians, and you just want Therians to go to graves. Like this is really helpful. Also, system of course helps you in that regard too. Like you just need, like once you get a Therian in your grave, they pretty much just go infinite. Especially with the field spell, because like between all the recursion you're doing and like if you just leave a Therian in your grave to target at all times, like you're always going to be getting value. One thing that I haven't seen anybody talk about in all the profiles that I've watched is that Bullline actually can target any warrior, and the monster that happens to be a warrior, which is really good, is actually Deer Note. So Deer Note being a warrior is relevant because it just has to be sent from field to the grave to be able to revive back a punk, and that applies when it is as an equip spell. So you can literally equip this. You can like bull target itself and another card to pop, and then this revive back Yaman and do like the whole punk play again, which is extremely good. And that definitely came up for me for sure. It came up more for me in testing than it did the actual event, but that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. Duke is a psychic. It is unfortunately also the only one that is a light or dark for Chaos Ruler typing. It is definitely the weakest one though, so it's one that I am considering cutting. There, like the only times where it really was crucial were in hands where like my hand was already bad. So I'm not sure if like it's necessary or if I would continue to play it moving forward. Reaper, I actually undervalued in testing, but I actually overperformed. Just because a lot of the times, like when you start with a Lily or Regulus and target the other one, like this is like your secondary interruption off the Therian package, and it is nice to have that for going first for sure. It is a very easy side up for going second. But yeah, like the Therian spells are extremely broken. They're very, very solid. Also, Lily is good in the Flunderies matchup because it's the one that you can summon under the Barrier Statue to attack over it. It's like stuff like that. Also, like it's cool to be able to just like summon all these in defense, and like in the Flunderies matchup, like Bull is like how you out like the M-Pen and stuff. And there's actually literally one game against Flunderies where I kept the M-Pen on board and I actually just popped their map. And I had the field spell up, so the M-Pen literally just couldn't deal with it. I had Regulus to negate like their next Flunderies push, and then I was able to just break the board afterwards. So like you can use like Bull and like field spell and Regulus and just like sit on that for a while against a lot of decks, and then like your opponent can't really do a whole lot if they can't out the field spell. So like this card, my friend makes fun of it a lot. Shout out to you, Damien. He calls it a floodgate, and it kind of is a floodgate in some respects. Like it really is hard for your opponent to make any pushes while this card's on the field. So like don't underestimate this card defining a lot of your games, because it'll happen a lot to where like you get into grindy simplified game states, like primarily if you like get hand trapped, and then you just sit in this card and like a lot of your other monsters, and then you just like end up winning from there. And again, the fact that you can add back even if you destroy an opponent's monster by battle is crazy, because it just turns a simple attack into a +2, which just is absurd to think about. So yeah, that is going to be it for the Therians. I think this engine is extremely, extremely strong, and there's a reason why they all kind of spiked in price over the past week or two. But yeah, these cards are super great. No complaints there. And then finally, we have the defensive cards. So we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of DD Crow, 2 copies of Effect Veiler. I played 1 copy of Ghost Ogre, 2 copies of Droplet, which I had to give back to my friend John as well, and then 1 Call by the Grave. John let me a lot of cards. He let me the 3rd field spell. He let me a 2nd Regulus, which I actually ended up picking up after the event, the Droplet, and a lot of the extra deck stuff. But yeah, these cards are all really, really good. The thing that underperformed most actually was DD Crow, because I ended up playing more Sword Soul than Despia. Like I played 5 Sword Soul, so this came out a lot actually post side. I actually wish I played Gamma or Nibiru, because I really would have liked to have had like kind of a higher impact hand trap that was also more versatile into like the other matchups that I played. Ogre is here not because I think it's a good hand trap, but because it's a good Hulk target in certain hands, where like you just want to leave this on board. Also, like it comes up because it's a level 3 psychic, so you can summon it off E-Tele, and also it's a name for Amazing Dragon, which we'll get to later. And I think that while it's not crazy, it's just like a pretty good like supplement to the other hand traps in the deck. And if you like play against Despia, you just like side it out and stuff. Droplet was good. I only played 2 of it because I wanted to diversify my defensive card lineup as much as I could, without breaking too much. The deck's 44. I would like it to cut it down more. I do think it can be cut down. But yeah, I think that something that I did miss, besides Gamma and Nibiru, which is I guess is not relevant to the non-engine cards, but I did miss Jet Synchron. Not like in terms of how I play, but in terms of like how my deck building could have been. Like I think I probably should have played Jet Synchron and like Hot Red Dragon, Arching Abyss. I didn't play those cards, but I probably should have, just because like it adds another layer of disruption, which probably would have just been better than Ogre in a lot of cases when I was just summoning Ogre and it didn't accomplish a whole ton. And like there are times where you have to again use Sharkusai in your punk combo, so you can't summon Sharkusai off Hulk, which was what I was ending up doing later on if I didn't need to use the Sharkusai. But overall, I think that this was like very, very solid. So rounds up the deck again. Like I mentioned, it was 44. I do believe I can cut it down some more, so I will be working on refining the list a bit. Next up, we have the extra deck here, so let's go ahead and talk about this. So Synchro monsters, we have 1 Formula Synchron, we have 1 copy of Chaos Ruler, this is Baron de Fleur that I borrowed, this is Amazing Dragon, and then we have Psychic and Punisher. So again, I think Hot Red Dragon, Arching Abyss should be here, and you notice I don't play Calamity. So I am not a fan of Calamity for a multitude of reasons, the first of which is that it loses extremely hard to Droplet, since you can only Hulk tag out in main phase, and like Formula Synchron in the main phase as well. Your opponent also gets windows to do things beforehand because like they obviously have first action in main phase 1. You know, of course with Regulus and like if you play Heart Red Dragon Archie Abyss, which like there's a multitude of different ways to do the combo. But if you do like the like Abyss plus Jet Synchron combo like with Formula Synchron, then like it makes it to where their first card activating doesn't matter as much, but they still have windows to interact with you. And I'm not a big fan of a card that also like can't miss timing, so you have to be particular when you use it. And also like in like niche scenarios, if you play against like Despia or like a Brando deck and they set Albaz, they can actually still go into Alba Leonidas by contact fusing away the dragon, and then suddenly you lose a lot of pressure. And this deck doesn't have a ton of follow-up directly. Like the follow-up is mainly through the field spell, like if they start attacking over things. But like the follow-up that the Punk engine generates is actually not that crazy because like you use the engine to go into your play, but it doesn't like recur itself in any meaningful fashion. So like you're relying on your Punk or your Therian follow-up, but in the cases where you are using your Therians as follow-up, it is when you're playing more of like a mid-range style. So I figured that I'd lean more into the mid-range style of things rather than just going out like full combo, and I think that that was actually to my advantage. It worked out pretty well. Punisher is really good, just because I came to realize that Sword Soul and Despia don't really have any efficient ways to out it. Despia actually can out it, at least from what I've heard. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but from what I've been told, Mirror Jade float actually does out Punisher because you are resolving an activated effect in the end phase. So like if they crash Mirror Jade into this, theoretically it should still blow up. Correct me if I'm wrong there, because I don't actually have like a source for that. I was just told that that was the case. But if that is true, then you know, Despia does have an out to it. But Sword Soul doesn't have like any efficient way to attack over this, and so I realized in round 4 I lost because for one I actually totally forgot that Foxy Team was a light under Xiaofeng, so I misplayed there. But I also, if like in the event that I didn't misplay, I should have just gone into this and just sat in it for a while because like it's really hard for that deck to really get over this thing. Something I think a lot of people know about is if you want to deal with this, if it's in a tap position, you can just start crashing your monsters to get your life points lower than this, and then you can out it that way. So I was summoning it in defense later on, which is kind of weird because like I was still going to battle phase just to boost its attack because it's a permanent boost and it's like once at the start of each battle phase. But yeah, like this card like is still annoying to out, like even if it's like just like a 35 defense position wall, and then like just afterward you switch to attack and you make it like over 11k. Like 11.5k is pretty much the threshold to where like if you have it there, like you're guaranteed pretty much to just beat over anything in the format that's like relevant and like go for game in one hit. So yeah, like this card, like it actually applies a lot of pressure. I kind of make fun of it where I call it kind of like the my deck's version of like Mystic Mine, because like your opponent just kind of like has to play awkwardly and they can't really out it. Like it's not Mystic Mine obviously in the sense that they can't play, but it's in the sense that like you're not going to lose for a while until they figure out a way to beat it, which is very hard to do. We have obviously Chaos Ruler is really strong. It's like one of the best cards in the deck. It's like your primary playmaker. Not even for the fact that it mills necessarily, because like you have a better targeted mill option in Melee, which like is theoretically better to go into like if you want to guarantee certain plays. But this also just like being able to recur itself like is a big deal for like your Renegade plays or like syncing with this into Flare on your opponent's turn and stuff. So I really did like that. Oh, also another thing with Hot Red is that if you play Hot Red, you can like Hot Red and like negate something and then sync it with Formula into this, which is good, or Psychic and Punisher even. So yeah, I really do like the versatility of like Formula in the deck, and that could be expanded upon even more with like Hot Red. But yeah, Amazing Dragon's the next one to talk about. So it's actually generic, and on summon, it allows you to, or on Synchro Summon, I should say, it allows you to target cards your opponent controls up to the number of level 3 psychic monsters with different names on your field or in your graveyard. So you can just compulse like, you know, at least 2 cards, and then sometimes even up to 3 or even 4 if you have Ghost Ogre. So this card's really strong. And then the other effect is that you can, as an ignition effect on your turn, just revive a Punk from your grave. You can't do both in the same turn, like both the bounce and the revive, but it is still extremely nice to have. There are a lot of times actually where like you wind up in game states where you want to have your Punk engine back just to be able to like go into Halkify Rex play. So you just summon this, no effect, bring back Xiamen, and there you go, you have Hulk right there. So yeah, this is like extremely good for those purposes, and that came up quite a lot. So yeah, that is it for the synchro monsters in this deck. Probably again there should be a copy of Hot Red in here. Next up for the Exceeds, we have Melee of the Trees as the rank 3. And then we have the Zombie Vampire. We have Dingirsu. And then 2 Exceeds that I borrowed were, this is a Hope Harbinger, number 38 Titanic Galaxy, the Spell Negator that also redirects attacks. We have number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord, the Monster Negator. And then we have Zeus as well. So yeah, I moved my 38 and I didn't realize that I needed one, so I had to borrow it. So I need to pick this one back up again. But I actually didn't make Photon Lord a single time until round 10, but I could have made any rank 8 there just for damage. But I summoned it just because like I would have felt bad for borrowing it and not having made it, and I had the game on board anyhow. But yeah, these were all... Actually, I can't say these are all good. These were all hit and miss, actually. So I want to talk about Zombie Vampire first because this one is the one that is... I think like most people who play Punk Therion would say it's like standard or like necessary, but I did not go into this card very much, especially Blind Game 1, because you're giving your opponent more resources to actually help break your board, especially into the Sword Soul matchup, where like one of the worst things you can do is mill Ashina or Vishuda, and suddenly your opponent actually just has more avenues to break your board. I think it's fine if you're going for Calamity and like you're suspecting your Sword Soul opponent just doesn't have Droplet or like a way to deal with the Hulk in like draw phase or something. Like some people are still playing Chalice in their Sword Soul lists, for example. So like if you get hit with like a negation on like your Hulk of Fibrax like in draw phase or standby phase, like then it's like this card really can help your opponent a lot more than it helps you, which is like not what I'm a big fan of. But against like for Wonderies, it's really good where you're guaranteed to not hit anything super valuable. So you can really just freely do this. And the games where you can combo with this, it is very good. But it is also kind of reliant on you hitting a tuner at times to go into Hulk afterward, because it's very rare that you can like do Chaos Ruler and then Deerno bring back level 8 and then go into this and still have a tuner left over to go into Hulk without just this simply hitting a tuner, which again is not really a guarantee, and I don't like that much variance. Like I think Chaos Ruler is pretty free to go for because you're gonna do a lot with it anyhow. But like this makes it so that you have to give up on a potential resource and just like bringing back a tuner off of Deerno in the first place to go Hulk that way, which is what I would rather do like 90% of the time. So this card, while I'm hesitant to cut it, but I also have thought about cutting it as well. But I mean, it is also a dark, which is like really important for like Chaos typing. We don't see Ogre Dance, so take with that what you will. The rank 8s were nice. I made Zeus only one time, but it was pretty good in that game state. Ding is like a nice kind of way to threaten things. If your opponent knows that Ding is coming, then like they have to kind of react pretty early with like, you know, like they black out and stuff, which did happen one game. And then there's also Melee of the Trees, which is really, really cool because you can actually do some interesting plays where like if you open like no Therions but Argor system, you can actually like system send a Lily and then use this to bring it back. A lot of people know about the Foolish effect, but this can also revive black plants. So like not only can you just dump a Laboria to like go ahead and target with the Therion that you have in your hand, but you can also just, you know, bring back the Therion and get your play started that way. The problem with this is kind of similar to the same problem as Zombie Vampire, where you're giving up tuner access to go to Hulk, because like your level 3s are usually the tuners. And so like you can go Hulk and then go this, which like is not bad, but it's definitely not like the best play. Like if you have to go into this, usually it means your hand is like a bit on the weaker side of things. But yeah, overall, I think these cards were, you know, definitely not bad. The rank 8s in Hope Harbinger, Hope Harbinger made a lot actually. Dingirsu made once or twice, Zeus made once or twice, Melia made once, and Zombie Vampire made like twice, both against Flanderies. And then we have the links, we have Hulk, we have Unicorn and Access Code. Probably should have played Selene actually, but I just wanted to make sure I had like more removal options, just in case like I couldn't access Dingirsu. I didn't want like that to be my only like real removal option. So yeah, I stuck with this. I actually didn't summon these cards a single time throughout the YCS, which is kind of crazy to think about. I didn't summon Access Code a single time. But it came up to where I just did the Ziam and OTK. I want to say almost once per round. Like it happened at least 8 times. And it's all facilitated by this card, the Fusion, which is Rising Cart. So on field, it's basically Rescue Rabbit. You can summon 2 punks from your deck with different names from each other that are not level 8. If it was Fusion Summon, that is. So you can't like Fox's Team bring it back and then activate the effect. Like that would be crazy good. But unfortunately, you can't do that. But the other effect is if it's Sent to the Grave as synchro material, for a punk monster, I believe, or is it just a single material in general? If you synchro summoned, if you just synchro summon in general using this card's material, you can target a punk on your board and make it attack twice. So yeah, this is how you OTK. You can make Amazing Dragon and then use the hidden effect of Xiamen to make the Amazing Dragon gain 600, and then the Carp makes the Amazing Dragon attack twice, so that's 7200 on board, and you'll have a Hulk with the combo to be able to make that happen. So that is 8700 damage that lets you clear 2 cards by bouncing them at the same time through the Amazing Dragon effect. So yeah, that's a really robust OTK that you wouldn't think would happen a lot, but like it actually is pretty reliable, because there's a fair amount of scenarios where like you just lead with Aetherian stuff, you get Regulus on board, and suddenly like you're just free to full combo like through any one disruption, and then like that's just how a lot of the games goes. You just OTK from there. So yeah, I was really happy with a lot of this extra deck. I would make some changes, but I think that it was definitely serviceable for what it needed to be. And then to refrain from this video being even longer than it already is, we have the side deck here. So we have 3 copies of Nibiru. Again, I feel like this probably should have been in the main deck, or maybe Gamma should have been in the main deck. This card was good, for sure, but it would have been better game 1 when like Sword Soul opponents weren't playing around it. Another thing that I would have definitely changed was I would have definitely played 3 Collector. I had it at 3, and then I cut it to 2 last minute, and it was a bad idea. I played 5 Sword Souls, so this should have been at 3 for sure. Like I had the right idea initially. I should have just stuck with it. We'll save this one for the end. We have 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and then 1 copy of Twin Twister, just as like a 4th back removal. I actually cut the 3rd Collector for this one, just to respect back row decks a bit more. In hindsight, it should have actually been the other way around. It should have been 3 Twister, 1 Cosmic, because I feel like a lot of the games actually against Sword Soul, you want to see Twin to out anti-spell and like the Blackout or like another Floodgate. Like I was always citing these against Sword Soul, like even like since round 2, which was when I played my first Sword Soul opponent. I was always citing these, but it just never, it was never there when I needed it to be. When like my hand was super spell heavy. Something I did stop citing into Sword Soul was actually Tactics. This card very much underperformed this entire weekend. This is one I would certainly cut. I think it would actually be better if it was in the main deck. But definitely like as a side against Sword Soul, which is what I had my side pattern be initially, it ended up being extremely weak just because like anti-spell destroys this, which is why I don't like Dark Ruler and Lightning Storm against that deck either. So yeah, this would probably be changed out for other stuff, like probably 3rd Collector. Maybe I would like put Nibiru in the main deck, cut Crow entirely, play Gamma, something like that in the side. Like those are all kind of potential options. And then 3 copies of D-Barrier. This card was very good, obviously. Whenever I flipped this card, it was just game every time. And then the last card is one people probably already know by now. I was hoping it wouldn't catch on, but it was Centuria Rose Whip. So if you guys are unfamiliar with this card, it is just basically a continuous effect where your opponent can only activate 1 spell or trap card each turn. And with Regulus, Regulus negates effects on activations. So they say activate Branded Fusion, you negate with Regulus, and that is their 1 activation that didn't get negated because the effect got negated. So now Rose Whip kicks in, and they can no longer activate any spells or traps for the turn. So it is a very solid card against the Despia deck, or like it's good against like Philanderies too, because a lot of their starters are spells, and like just other random rogue matchups like Sky Striker. Like this card just performs really well into those matchups. I just summon it off Hulk. If you mill it off Chaos Ruler, you can actually bring it back with Melee, which is a cool interaction with this deck. And so yeah, I only got to pull this off like once or twice. One time that I pulled it off, it was against Philanderies. He had a Dark really evenly, but I actually still won that game. I actually OTK'd the next turn, just because he didn't have a very solid play afterward. He like summon Barrier Statue, set 1 pass, and so I was able to just use the Punk Trap that I kept off evenly to negate the Barrier Statue, and I like went summon back Chaos Ruler, and then I had System Engraved to add back Regulus target Lily add Field Spell would add another Therion. It was just game from there. So yeah, it was really it didn't like perform the way I wanted it to, but that was honestly just because I only played 1 Despia. I went second both games anyways because I lost a die roll. Oh, something I also didn't mention is I lost 8 out of 9 die rolls day 1, which was very sad. But like yeah, it is very it goes to show that this deck still has a lot of really good things going for it, even if it has to go second. It's actually not that bad at breaking boards. One final thing I want to address actually is Mystic Mine. I know a lot of people are going to ask about Mystic Mine and like that I didn't main deck and out to it. So actually what I realized is if you have if you have Agro System, you actually can't deck out with this because you can actually get it to where like you discard for, or you have like 6 cards in your hand, and then like you system back itself. Like because normally you'll be you like target a Therion, you add back the Therion and put this back to the bottom, but this can actually add itself to your hand. So like, you can add this to your hand and then put the Therion on the bottom, and then you can go at end phase for hand size limit. You can discard this and get it back in grave for next turn. So this is a way that you can just make sure you never deck out against Mystic Mine, which is good. So and because I'm playing 44, there's like a high likelihood that like they'll deck out before me if they choose to like commit to the mine. So like that's pretty cool. I maybe should have like still made an out to it, but I thought like for that reason it was fine because I had an out to. I had like one Cosmic in the main for a while, but I ended up cutting it once I figured this out. But yeah, that is going to be it. I know the theory was kind of a little. It wasn't like the most organized, but I had a lot to kind of talk about. Let me know if you guys have any like comments, questions, or anything like that. I will be playing this deck again quite a bit more now that the tournament's over. I just want to play this deck a lot. And so I will be happy to do that for you guys. But thanks guys for watching. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.